Top story continues to be what happened with Seattle-based Convoy as the digital brokerage announced its closure yesterday. JP Hampstead joins us again to talk about what happened next and what could happen next for the company. JP, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So as we all know, yesterday, CEO Dan Lewis, in a company-wide call, basically told everyone they were losing their jobs. The company wasn't in a position to offer severance or benefits or things like that. They're retaining a small strategic solutions team to try to find a buyer for the technology platform, but the brokerage is done. Convoy is finished moving freight. The doors are closing on that on that part of the company. So it was it's a really sad day. It's there have been a lot of people cheering Convoy on over the years. A lot of people cheering against them. It's interesting to see, the reaction of the industry, right, to these events. But I think probably the true value of Convoy that they're going to leave us with is basically just how they forced 3PLs and freight brokerages to raise their tech game, to invest more in their platforms, whether it's their driver app, whether it was automated matching and pricing. I think there are still some buyers, even incumbent logistics companies, that are currently taking a look at the technology, seeing whether they want to buy that, seeing whether they want to bring those engineering and product teams on. And so, that's kind of where we are at today.
So initial speculation yesterday was thinking maybe some rumors swirling about Amazon looking at it, Walmart, possibly Maersk. We saw that Bloomberg article that was written when the original news started to drop. Any type of clarity on who these buyers might be, or are we still kind of looking at it's a kind of a hush-hush situation right now?
Yeah, it's hush-hush. I mean, there have been rumors about a lot of different companies that have taken a look. I mean, and frankly, like any large company that's in a position to acquire that has substantial amounts of cash, should take a look and probably has taken a look. We've also heard, for example, would UPS be interested in, bolting on some of this technology onto Coyote, right? A lot of people are interested in the driver app, which probably has one of the biggest installed bases of any of the driver apps. So, more drivers, more coverage. A lot of people might be interested in that capacity. But they're not talking about who specifically is, in the discussions to buy this right now.
I want to throw up a quote here real quick from the email that came out. And this is basically what Dan Lewis said regarding M&A activities, basically saying that it's shrunk substantially and most of our logical strategic acquirers of Convoy are also suffering from the freight market collapse, making the deal doing that much harder. Obviously, since the time they hired Goldman Sachs, that was a very short period of time in terms of M&A to try and get something done. But why perhaps were they not able to get a deal done? I know their valuation was just huge for a lot of people, but why maybe a deal didn't get done before the time they had to close their doors? Yeah,
I think two reasons, really. One is that prospective buyers, for example, a lot of people had noticed that they've been flying in and out of Eden Prairie, Minnesota, where C.H. Robinson is headquartered, right? And apparently they were working on that deal for about 4 months, right? For a pretty substantial amount of time. It was getting close, but Robinson's earnings were cramped, right, by the same squeeze that has faced other brokers that have collapsed margin dollars per load. Their cost of capital is going up. Right, so it's more expensive to buy. It's harder to realize returns on things you buy through debt. I mean, I think that those are the basic reasons, and it's the same reason why M&A across M&A deals across the board are down. It's why private equity groups really have to be more choosy about their targets when they're levering up companies, because all of that debt is far more expensive than it used to be. It really just changes the calculus of what kind of deals make sense.
So, JP, obviously with a big situation like this, we have to take a look at the workforce, and it's a very unfortunate situation for those folks that you mentioned are being let go without the ability to be paid out severance or things like that. Of course, Convoy, headquartered in Seattle, a state that has to file WARN notices. Is that something that we could be looking at, possibly legal issues coming to what's left of Convoy, because this happened without necessarily a WARN notice?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer for that. that. So I don't want to speculate on that. I would expect there to be some, I don't know whether they're technically haven't lost their jobs yet and they're about to, and that's when the one knows will be fine. I can't answer that question.
That's a question for Clarissa Haas.
I do know that, that's a question for Clarissa. I do know that, lots of people already have great offers at other places. I hope that, more companies will be started out of this, right? That some of these people who enjoy the time they spend with their colleagues will stick together and start new projects and new teams. But time will tell.
Given Convoy's massive investment, they got a lot of big names that invested in the company at the very beginning. In terms of what they're looking for, and from an investor standpoint, now looking at this, are they a cautionary tale in terms of how not to do things necessarily, or what does the investment community learn about? Obviously, this was a great idea, just never really came to fruition.
Yeah, I think we saw Convoy raise a lot of money, especially in the later stages, from people who were essentially tourists into the transportation space. Mm-hmm. They didn't understand the nature of freight brokerage gross revenues. They were valuing it too highly, as if it was some kind of like recurring software revenue. And Bill, that's another thing that's probably complicating a deal to try to sell the tech platform, is that how do you value it? Right? Convoy didn't sell software. It built a lot of really awesome stuff. Both, it built a TMS for the dispatchers of small fleets. It built a great TMS for its customers to track their shipments and look at all different kinds of analytics about their carbon footprint, the performance of their facilities and stuff like that. It had great, a lot of great internal technology, but none of that was monetized, right? So it's like, okay, if it's not generating revenue, how, what's the price tag, right? It sort of goes against a lot of the typical M&A playbooks, and I think that's probably one thing that's complicating the deal there.
So let's finish this up talking about industry reaction, because as we've seen, it's been kind of mixed. I think a lot of people have been very critical about the decision and the way it was announced. A lot of people have been very kind of understanding to the situation as well, right? Saying, you know what, if you were affected by this layoff, come work with us here. As you mentioned, a lot of these folks have good job offers going on right now. Do you think that this was something that the industry had expected to see? We know that there were people rooting for and rooting against Convoy. Has the reaction been fair so far, or has it been a little bit harsh?
I think that I think it's been a harsh reaction. I think that because due to the nature of its operating model, due to the fact that Convoy invested so much money in building its own technology, it had higher operating costs. It had higher, which eventually translates to higher cost to cover a load, right? It was never able to bring that down, even through a lot of the great automation it achieved. So I think people expected that. I think that the winds that were blowing against Convoy, though, are blowing against everyone in the industry, just because they fell and they weren't the first to fall.
They won't be the last.
we've already seen surge transportation. They probably won't be the last one either. So I think anyone who's dancing on the grave of Convoy is probably a little premature. Should probably make sure that their own business is in good shape.
It's tough for when people have to make hard decisions, and obviously Convoy had to make a very tough one here. So JP, thanks.
Yeah, and sorry, and just to say that these executives have to fight to the very end, right? It's their job, it's their duty to try to save the company, to realize as much value as they can up until the last minute, and sometimes it doesn't work out, and those shutdowns feel very abrupt. But a lot of times it's just because the Hail Mary was an incomplete pass, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, JP, thank you for joining us again today to continue to shed some light on this. For those folks who are impacted, go check out LinkedIn. Lots of people posting about job opportunities up there. Everybody willing to help in a situation like this.
Yep. All right. Let's move over to the wall. We'll get our first carrier update of the morning with Thomas and Donnie.